Thank you, George, for agreeing to come and talk. There's a lot of talk about a new party, setting up a new party, or what party is the best party. And I think before anything's gone in too far, I think it'd be good to learn what might have happened with parties in the past. And the last big alternative party to the Labour Party was the Respect Party that you were central to. I'd just like to know what your thoughts are and memories are of Respect, how it got so big, and from there on, what happened.
I'm grateful to you, actually, because I hadn't thought about Respect for quite some time, and knowing that you wanted to talk about it concentrated the mind wonderfully. It is really important to learn the lessons of Respect, because not a lot of people know this, as Michael Caine might say, but we were the most successful left-wing political organization in this country's entire history. We polled 250,000 votes in England and Wales just a few weeks after we were formed in the European parliamentary elections. And we went on to win one parliamentary seat in 2005, another under the rubric of Respect, at least, although it was a different Respect by then, in my by-election victory in Bradford West in 2012. We elected some 20 local councillors. We came close to winning other parliamentary seats. Salma Yaqub in Birmingham came twice, pretty close, second place. We had other second places. We had, at the time, the most successful by-election challenge from the left, Yvonne Ridley in Leicester East, again, not long after we were founded. As I say, not a lot of people know that. And hats off to all of those, even those that later fell out with me or I with them. Hats off to all of us for those great achievements. In 2004, in the European Parliament elections, I polled 100,000 votes in London. Just me as the lead candidate there. We won, therefore, 150,000 votes. Elsewhere in the country, we had outstanding candidates standing, like Anas Al-Takriti, for example, who had a Leeds connection and ran for us in West Yorkshire. We didn't make the breakthrough, though in 2010, it was perfectly credible for me to go on television, as I did, and discuss the possibility that we would have 3 members of parliament elected in the 2010 elections, 2 in Tower Hamlets, and more about Tower Hamlets later, and 1 in the case of Salma Yaqub in Birmingham. Well, even at the height of its authority and popularity, we can say, the Communist Party never came close to the numbers of votes in the country that the Respect coalition garnered. So that's the good news, Crispin. There's lots of bad news also, but it is important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, that, you know, the Stop the War demo in 2003 was remarkable in its size and the number of people. I was on that demo. I wasn't interested in politics for a while at that point, but that got me back into thinking that there was something worth fighting about. There was 2 million or so people, or maybe more, on that demonstration. That is a massive number of people from which to form a political party on a single kind of issue. So the fact it was on a single issue would have made the start very strong. But then you have other issues come in, and then does it all fall apart? Because, you know, we can all agree on one thing, but can we agree on the green issues and other issues that that go. Is that why you think it didn't continue? Because it was based on one single issue?
No, it wasn't actually based on one single issue, but you're right. Maybe most of the people who voted for it were voting on one single issue. And once they got past that issue and began to look at our stands on other matters, perhaps they didn't find them quite so attractive. But the 2 million march on February 15th was, of course, the perfect launch pad. I think actually we should have launched it from that platform. I don't know why, in retrospect, we didn't. It would have been the perfect launch pad. Perhaps we were still hoping against hope that with the broadest possible alliance in the Stop the War coalition, we could maybe stop the war. Now looking back, we didn't, so we might as well have done so. And of course, not only was that the biggest ever manifestation of people in Britain in all of our country's history, we had several of those. We had the biggest midweek demonstration. We had huge mammoth turnouts over and over again. And all credit must go to those who organized that mighty effort. Including people who were co-leaders of Respect and with whom I now have very bad relations. But Lindsay German, the leader of the Stop the War coalition, did a magnificent job in leading the Stop the War coalition in those days. And in the early days of Respect, I mean, we were in hyperactivity. You have to cast your mind back. We were doing a public meeting more or less every day, sometimes 2, and on a few occasions 3 public meetings in a single day, lunchtime, tea time, and in the evening. And we were the same, if you like, revolving cast, pardon me, of speakers, leaders. In fact, I used to regularly whisper to Lindsay German on the platform, is this a Stop the War meeting or a Respect meeting? Because obviously one had to cut one's cloth accordingly. If it was a Stop the War meeting, it couldn't be blatantly party political and so on. So these were great days and I'll never forget them. And the people that I shared them with, I'll never forget those days and that good fellowship. The fact that it all went extremely sour is, of course, highly regrettable, but also something from which people must learn. We did have a one-issue profile amongst certain people. We were ultra strong in one part of the demography of the country, the Muslim population, the minority ethnic populations in general. We were very strong amongst those sections. We were less strong, and partly it's a zero-sum game that. It's a pity. We have to find a way to make it not so, but the more you're identified as a party that stands up for the minorities, the more problem you have breaking through amongst the majority. And if you are seen to be hyper-focused on minorities, then the majority population calculates that you're not for them. You might even be against them, which of course is not true, but there is a section that think that way. And of course, these are lessons that haven't gone away, you know, and we simply have no alternative but to learn from them. I would say the Respect Coalition fell apart when it did. It continued, but a different kind of Respect and much smaller, much more just around me, really, and led to the landslide by-election victory in Bradford, which again should not be underestimated, the biggest ever result the left ever scored anywhere in history in Britain, was me winning a 10,000 vote majority in a rock solid Labour seat in a 21-day campaign, 4 of which I spent away in Cairo. So that achievement was, of course, the last achievement of Respect, but we saved the best for last. No, the main problem was, and this is true of all future events, including the one I'm involved in now, without going into too much detail, where you have an organized party inside a party. How do you avoid the problem of that party within a party seeking to build its party at the expense of the broader party that it is in amongst? And I'm afraid we didn't pass that test in the Respect Coalition with the SWP, and we didn't pass that test yet in the Workers' Party of Britain, which I currently lead.
So, I mean, if we look at the Labour Party's formation, it had a number of parties involved and different organisations involved, and managed to keep itself together in some way. I mean, obviously, it's not as we want it to be now, but for some time it worked. What do you think the key is for how the Labour Party managed to do it, and how maybe Respect couldn't do it?
Well, the whole has to be much greater than the sum of the parts. And in Respect, that wasn't true. In the case of the Labour Party coming together in the way that you described, the parties which formed it were, with the exception of the ILP, minuscule and dwarfed by the great mass that coalesced around the Labour Party. That was not true in Respect. The SWP were numerically a big fish in the Respect pool, and not just a big fish numerically, but also in terms of work. I don't know what it's like now, but the SWP were very fine workers in those days. They were hyperactive, they were well led, they could organize a decent sized public meeting at the drop of a hat, and did over and over and over and over again. And so they were, if you like, too big for Respect. And when they began to seek to, I would put it this way in capitalist words, they sought to take their dividends too early. They ought to have allowed the business to grow far more, and then their dividends would have been more handsome. But they sought to cash in their chips far too early. And therefore, instead of being a pole of attraction inside Respect, they basically sought to take over Respect and call all the most important shots, which I could have lived with. But when they started to seek to call the small shots, that was absurd. Like, who should be our candidate to lead the Respect group on the Tower Hamlets Council? That was the proximate reason for the split with the SWP. Now nobody even remembers who the two individuals in the running for that position even were. But when they started seeking to remove my parliamentary staff, which they actually did, you know, they demanded that my two parliamentary staffers resign their jobs because they accused them of having gone native and siding with me in these inner party arguments rather than with them, whose members they were. When a party starts behaving like that within a bigger organization, nothing can work. All trust is lost, and I'm afraid it all was lost.
So, and that sounds like sort of big names within each group contesting the party, but the rank and file of the party were not at each other's throats. I mean, is that something that could be learned from, that those at the top of each component do not have as much power as they did in that case? I mean, to destroy a party because there's an internal fight between leading figures of different factions is not what you want to have from this. So it's got to be avoided, hasn't it?
It has to be avoided at all costs if anything new is going to emerge. I don't know at this stage if something new is going to emerge, but if it were to, then these lessons definitely have to be learned. But the SWP were, at that time, a very disciplined cadre. So when the tops in the SWP cried havoc and unleashed the dogs of war, I'm afraid, virtually to a man and woman, the rank and file of the SWP agreed, obeyed, and followed suit.
Right.
The lesson to be learned is that you need to be big. If you're big, you can live with, you can coexist with different trends and so on. If you're small, then narcissism of the small difference will destroy you. You have to avoid having a small so-called broad party with a big so-called vanguard party within it. My experience now twice is that does not work.